How would you define long-term success? In today's instant gratification society, long-term success isn't something a lot of people think about. They think about, hey, I want success right now. I want what I want and I want it now. People really, a lot of times, don't think about the long term. What's going to happen 20, 30, 40, 100 years from now? And so people aren't planning that out. We want to be instantly famous. We want to be instantly fit. We want to be instantly flush with cash. That's just how a lot of people are. But the reality is, life isn't really like that, is it? We don't get everything we want instantly. And if we do, sometimes that's not good for us. If you got everything you wanted all at once, you may not be able to handle it. And what you do get kind of goes away. I recently saw a statistic that 70% of lottery winners who've won I think a million and more, and then in 5 years, it's all gone. In 5 years, they've spent all their money. You're talking people who've won millions upon millions of dollars, and in 5 years, they're broke. That's people who don't understand long-term success. They understand, hey, I've got this right now. I'm going to do what I want right now. And they don't think about the future, and it comes back to bite them. And what we want to do as men is make sure that we are long-term successes. And it starts really with an attitude shift. We have to change our attitude as men. And when we have a long-term attitude, we're more likely to be a long-term success. So we're going to explore what that looks like in today's show. So let's jump in.
Welcome to the Confident Man Podcast, empowering men with the confidence they need to live their adventure. Now, here is your host, David Maxwell.
Hey guys, welcome to the Confident Man Podcast. I'm so glad that you joined me today. We are continuing our March Man Month focus. And today we're talking about long-term success. You've probably never thought of the fact that some bedtime stories can last a long time. You're like, bedtime stories, what does that have to do with anything? Well, if you've heard of the story The Hobbit, what you may not know is that The Hobbit started when J.R.R. Tolkien was tell his kids bedtime stories. And he kind of created The Hobbit and some of the basics of it while he was telling them a story. And eventually he compiled the stories and kind of finished it out and wrote The Hobbit based on some bedtime stories that he told his kids. Those stories, along with the entire Lord of the Rings book series, the Silmarillion, and all those, have outlived Tolkien, and people still enjoy them today. That's something that I would call a long-term success. We're still talking about it today. But did you know that when the Lord of the Rings came out, some of the critics kind of bashed it, and they said that the writing was juvenile? Think about that. A critic who we don't remember his name, we don't remember who he was, but he was bashing it. And today the stories are still enjoyed by millions across the world. Yeah, I think the long-term success of The Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings series, has kind of proven true for J.R.R. Tolkien, his family, and everyone around the world. Well, today we're talking about the power of long-term success. What does it mean to be a long-term success? The most powerful men are the ones who have a lasting legacy, one that is really a long-term success. And as men, we want to not let ourselves get caught up in the instant fix society, in the quick win society. And we want to start thinking about, what does it mean to be a long-term success? And you know what I'm talking about. We see it all over today. Take a pill and you'll lose weight. You don't have to do anything else. You just take a pill and the weight falls off you. People believe that. Or at parenting, hand the kids an iPad. They're quiet. It doesn't matter. They can look at whatever they want, but they're quiet. And that's the most important thing. That's a quick fix. That's not a long-term success. Or I've heard guys say this, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. It's like, what? What does that have to do? Those are just three quick examples of short-term thinking. When people aren't thinking long-term success, they kind of go for what's right now. And we have to fight that as men. We have to fight against that. And we have to work to build a solid foundation in our life that lasts a long time, not only in our lives, but those we really care about. Yeah, it's the harder way. People say, well, that's a lot of hard work. That's why it lasts the longest, because we put the work in. We do what we're supposed to do as men. So today we're going to talk about the 3 tips you need to find long-term success. And they are, you've got to have it's either quick fix versus sustained growth. You've got to pick one. You either want the quick fix or you want the sustained growth. You're either going to be an adrenaline junkie or you're going to make healthy choices. And you're going to be in constant turmoil or you're going to have intentional living. is the quick fix versus sustained growth attitude. The quick fix mentality is a very different one from sustained growth. I mean, they're both polar opposites of each other. Now, the quick fix is focused on short-term thinking. It's kind of what I call the duct tape way of living. Let's get this problem fixed and move on. The problem with that is those quick fixes sometimes don't last, and you're refixing them again and again and again. And we're not reflecting on the important issues of our life, the things that we need to figure out. We just want the quick answer. We kind of get into that can I, which wins over should I. Can I do this instead of should I do this? Quick fix thinks can I. We look at the possibility in the moment. We don't think about long-term consequences or anything. And we see that in our financial markets today. A lot of people are going in to make quick money, but it's devastating the industry in a lot of ways because people just want to get rich. And we also see quick fixing in our own life in the way we run our calendar. We tend to overbook. We tend to, I got time. I can do that. And then when we have emergencies, we fix it, but we never go back and fix the main problem that we're overbooking. And a lot of times, those that we really care for end up paying the price. We say, oh, I'll make up to my family later. I'll take them on vacation. 1 week of the year is not going to make up for the other 51 weeks of you ignoring a family. It's just the way it is. And that brings out the truth that quick fixes often hurt our closest relationships. When you're in a life of quick fixing all the time, a lot of times you'll say things like, oh, they'll understand. My kids will understand. My wife will understand. Well, a lot of guys have thought that until their wife walks out, until they go home and no one's there, because they kept quick fixing and they never really had any sustained growth with it. They keep saying things like, I'm going to start tomorrow. Have you ever done that? I have. I'm tomorrow I'm serious. And the next day it's tomorrow. And what it is we feel good because we're saying something about it. I'm thinking about it, but we're not really doing anything about it. We're kind of just going from quick fix to quick fix. I think we've all been guilty of that. What is sustained growth? Sustained growth is when you focus on priorities. What's the most important thing? What do I need to do right now? Instead of duct tape living, it's kind of like having a garden. With a garden, you've got to plan it out. You've got to, plant it. You've got to care for it. You've got to harvest it. When you do sustained growth, you cultivate your life. You don't just say, hey, whatever happens, happens. You don't just survive. Long-term focus is focus on things like the priorities and your purposes. What's my priority in life? What's my purpose? Men who live with priorities and a sense of purpose, those are the guys who become long-term successes, not the guys who just want to make a quick buck. Those hurt everybody around them. Long-term success, you think about things like self-regulation over self-gratification. You learn to maintain and control your own passions. You direct your energy. You direct your passions toward long-term things. Men who do that aren't the men who just live for the pleasure of the moment. Those guys don't last. If your passions control you, then you're going to kind of just go with whatever you feel in the moment. And that doesn't always lead to the best decisions. You want to think long-term. And that means you have to regulate. You have to self-regulate yourself and say, you know what? I want that, but I don't need that. Or if I do that, it's going to destroy everything in my life. There's a lot of men who wish they had thought that in one moment before they did bring a lot of destruction to their life. Also, when you think long-term relationships or long-term success, you think of long-term relationships. You think of, okay, what's best for my relationships with the people who are important to me? What am I doing to spend time with my wife, my children, my friends, those who I really care about? When you are thinking long-term and sustained growth, you're thinking about your relationships. And it comes down to your daily choices. When you are thinking long-term, you think about your daily choices and how they pile up to reach long-term success. When you're looking at long-term, you know that you're building something brick by brick. And that helps you make the decision today, I'm going to do this because one day I want that. And so it's piece by piece, brick by brick. You're building something. So it helps you in the today to make the right decision. But you also understand that if you miss a day, if something happens, you're not destroying the whole building. You see, that's important. Sometimes we get discouraged. We say, oh, today I blew it. Maybe you're doing a diet and you mess up one day. And a lot of guys just, that's it. I quit. I can't do it. No. You understand that you're just doing it brick by brick. So if you miss a day, you just jump back on the next day. You didn't mess everything up. It's like for me, the other day, I had computer issues. I could not get my podcast out. I'm trying to do one Monday through Friday every day. I couldn't do it the other day. I was frustrated. I was about to throw my computer through the window. Nothing was working. I tried all this stuff, spent the whole day. And finally, that night, when I tried this one last thing, thinking this will get it out, it didn't work either. And you know what I did? I just turned my computer off and I went on to bed. I said, forget it. It's just not going to go out today. It's not the end of the world. I'm building this thing brick by brick. We're seeing growth. It's great growth. I think guys would forgive me if I missed a day. I didn't get on and whine and complain. It was just, hey, that's just one of those days. And I woke up the next day, started over, and got everything working. So here's the deal. Understand that your life is sustained growth, which means messing up one day is not going to hurt you. But you want to think of the sustained growth and not the quick fix way of living. It's like if you have 20 bucks. If you have 20 bucks in your pocket, you can go out and get a couple of fast food meals for the week. 20 bucks won't buy you a lot fast food anymore, but if you're careful, you can get maybe 2 meals out of it and you can, live for that day. But you take 20 bucks to a grocery store, you can still buy enough food to last multiple days. Not as much as it used to be, but you can still do better 20 bucks at the grocery store than you can 20 bucks at the fast food joint. That's sustained growth. You're thinking long term. It takes a little more work. You got to cook the food, you got to make it or whatever, but it's going to last longer than the quick fix. And that's how you want to think about your life. You want to think, what am I doing that's sustaining? What am I doing that's fixing it long term and not just surviving the day? Because quick fix doesn't last. Sustained growth brings long-term success. The second thing we want to talk about is adrenaline fixes versus healthy choices. When you're thinking long-term success, health has to be a component. It just does. You want to have the energy. You want to be able to last. You want to do things long-term. And I think that's all of us. Now, when I say health, I'm not talking just physical health. That is part of it. If you can't do anything physically, that's a problem. But the health that a lot of times we're not thinking about is really our mental health, our emotional health. And a lot of guys, they live in this adrenaline fix lifestyle. And that's why I want to cover it specifically when we're talking about the adrenaline fix. Because long-term success means you're not going to hit your adrenaline all the time. A lot of people are living from adrenaline hit to adrenaline hit. And that's just not good for you long term. It's not good for your health. It's not good for the way you think. And you kind of get addicted to your own adrenaline. And I don't think that's good for us as men, because I think long-term success means we don't need our adrenaline as much, that we can perform at a high level without the need of adrenaline. So what we want to do is kind of look at some of the areas that we want to look at when we're going from adrenaline fixes to healthy choices. Some of the things we have to think through. One, adrenaline is not sustainable. It's just not. You get those short energy bumps from adrenaline. They're fine. They have a place, but it's not meant to be a lifestyle. It's kind of like those 5-hour energy drinks. Maybe you do one of those once in a while. They're not meant to be every day, all day. If you're hitting the double espresso every day, that means the caffeine has become something you need more than something you just do. And I hear people say, well, I thrive under pressure, David. And I get that. But what you're really saying is, I need pressure. I need the adrenaline. And that's not good for long-term health, because eventually that's going to break down. Eventually it's going to wear you out. You can push through fatigue and pain a few times. We all have to do it at times. But you don't want to live your life consistently with high stress, because that high stress will break you down. You might be able to handle it for a while, but you're not meant to handle it all the time. Our adrenaline is to be used when we need it on rare occasions, on those other occasions. But a lot of men today, that's all they're running on. They're running on emergency after emergency. And that's not good for them. It's not good for their long term health. Because you have to understand that healthy choices need momentum. You want to build those healthy choices in your life. And it starts with just one thing. If you just make one healthy choice, then it builds to another healthy choice. A lot of people think it's all or nothing. And that's how a lot of men are. We want to fix everything at once. When it comes to health, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to run a marathon. I'm going to do this and do that in the next week. And that's just how we are. That's our nature. But I want to challenge you that your healthy choices start with just one thing. What are you doing to not rely on your adrenaline glands? What are you doing to get the adrenaline out of your life and learn how to function sustainably long term? That's what we have to do as men. It could be something as simple as I'm going to get more sleep. I'm going to go to bed an hour earlier, or I'm going to go walk for 30 minutes since we're talking physical health there, or I'm going to start reading once a week. Or if you just do one thing, I would challenge you, do a weekly planning session. Sit down with your calendar and look at the week and say, okay, what have I got this week? What do I need to do? If you do nothing else and you just do that weekly plan, you're beginning to build a healthy choice because you're going to look at your week differently. And that's going to help you not live emergency to emergency. So what I'm saying is just start with one choice. It could be getting more sleep. It could be planning. I'm not sure what it is for you. Maybe it's using your phone less, not taking it with you to the bathroom and taking a book instead. Do something that helps your brain have a healthy choice, something besides going on the energy of adrenaline. You also want to find your reality. As guys, we tend to over exaggerate what we can do. We tend to over exaggerate and we say yes to lots of things when we should say no to more. Because when we say yes to a lot of things, then we're living in this fantasy world. We're living in a world that's not real. And what we have to do is know, what can I do? What can I do well? And what can I not do? You see, healthy choices focus on the reality of what you can do and not what you hope to do. And you may grow to be better one day, but where are you at right now? What can you do to push yourself? True. But what's your reality? See, a lot of us think, oh, I've got time. I can do all of this. I can do all of that. And you can't. Which means what you have to do is decide, am I going to bring my best? Are you going to really bring your best to everything you do? Or are you just going to do enough to get by? You see, if you decide to bring your best, then what you've done is made a choice that's healthy. I'm going to bring my best. And you understand, I can't bring my best to everything. So what things am I going to bring my best to? That right there will help you weed out your calendar, will help you know what to say yes to and what to say no to. And with that, you want to flow with the natural rhythms of life. A healthy choice is to flow with what season you're in as a man. You could be a brand new married man. That's a different flow of life from being a single guy. You could have small children. That's a different season of life. You could have teenagers. You may have a work schedule that has busy seasons. Understand that. Learn to flow with that rhythm. Every life has a natural flow. Every job has a natural flow. What you want to do is understand what that flow is. Every person is unique. Every situation is unique. Every family is unique. Figure out your flow. Figure out the flow of your family and learn to weave and move in that flow, and you'll make it the best fit for your life. That's a healthy choice. That keeps you from living emergency to emergency. And then at times, you just got to understand that sometimes you just got to embrace the suck. We all have to do things that aren't ideal. Sometimes life throws curveballs at us. Things happen we don't want, we don't expect, and you just got to suck it up and get through it. And that's what the adrenaline is for. Sometimes those times in life. But you want to have that adrenaline in you and not waste it on unimportant stuff. Sometimes we all have to do things that we don't like to do, we don't want to do. And you want to have the energy for that. And when you make the healthy choices before, It helps you be able to embrace sometimes those hard things that you have to go through because you've been living healthy before that. Third area we want to talk about when it comes to an attitude change for long-term success is going from constant turmoil versus intentional living. The battle we face is our decision, what type of headspace are we going to live in? What type of headspace do we want to have? And you make that choice every day. You decide, do I want to live in constant turmoil or am I going to live intentionally? Am I going to live on purpose? So let's look at what that means. If you're living in constant turmoil, that means that you're just surviving. And that's how a lot of guys live today. I want to survive. If I could just make it to Friday, if I could just make it to Saturday. And so what they're doing is they're just trying to make it. They're trying to live. I'm not saying that we don't go through seasons like that. We all do. You go through rough seasons. Sometimes you're in those survivor seasons, but you don't want that to be your life. You don't want that to be all the time. And if it is, something's wrong. You need to change something. And for a lot of men, their lifestyle is one of constant turmoil. There's always a struggle. There's always an emergency. They're always saying, oh, I'm never going to be like this again. And then they are. And what happens is we got those voices in our head that kind of tell us lies during this time. You know, the ones where, hey, when things slow down, I'm going to fix it. And things don't slow down. We say that in our head, but it's not true. Or if I can just get one more account, when I finish this project, then I'm going to slow everything down. And it's funny how we keep saying that day after day, month after month, year after year, and it never slows down. And what happens is that turmoil becomes who we are, but it boils over into our family. It does. You can't live in constant turmoil without it affecting your relationships. It just does. Your marriage won't be at its best if you're living in constant turmoil. If you're always having to go, 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 and you're living emergency to emergency, your marriage isn't the best it could be. The relationship with your kids won't be the best. A lot of times, men who live this way are lonely because they don't have any friends. They don't take time to have friends. So it's not good for them. We don't want to live in constant turmoil. So what's the antidote? Well, you want to live intentionally. What does intentional living look at? Well, you have a purpose. You live on purpose. You decide to live with a purpose. You're not just surviving, you're charting your course through the seas of life, which means you're kind of riding the waves. You're figuring out where you're going because you have a map. This is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. You say, well, Dave, that's not easy. Well, welcome to the club. It's not. That's why so few people do it. But you could be a man who does it. You could be a man who chooses to chart your course, to go a specific way. And you do that by kind of picking out the compass. What direction do you want to go? And then you go that way. One of the interesting things, pilots, when they fly, they have to always be watching their course. Where are they going? What direction are they going? Because the winds change, different things change. So they could get 1 degree off and end up somewhere way different. But what they have to do is keep making those adjustments, keep adjusting what they do. Or actually, if the computer's flying, the computer does it for them. But they have a way of doing it. It's the way of working it out. Our life is that way as men. You're not going to decide one time, this is my purpose and everything's going to go perfect after that. People who tell you that, they're lying. It's not going to be like that way. You make the decision, this is my purpose. Then you have to manage that decision each day with your daily decisions. That's where a lot of people come up with a purpose statement for their life, but then they don't do anything with it because they're not reviewing it, they're not looking at it, they're not applying it to their life. You have to do that as a man, or you're going to lose your direction. And managing is something you actually get better and better at, and it'll take less and less time the more you do it. You'll get good at managing it. You'll get good at directing your life. You'll be good at intentional relationships. You'll intentionally build a relationship with your wife, with your children. You'll make time for them. You'll make sure they're not getting the leftovers of you. And I'm not saying you're not going to be tired. A lot of times when my kids were little, I came home wiped out. I was tired. But you know what? It wasn't their fault I was tired. So I brought energy to my relationship with them. Even though I was tired, I just sucked it up because I wanted to give to my children the very best I could. I wanted to give to my wife the very best I could. And that's what we have to do as men. We have to make that choice that's intentional. This is the way I'll live. Now, when you think of a constant turmoil life or an intentional life, a way to illustrate that is the difference between building a shelter and building a house. If the weather's bad, you can get a shelter built in the woods. You can put up something with leaves and branches that will keep the rain out and off you. But there's a difference between a shelter and a house. And a shelter can protect you for a little. A house is a place you can relax and live and feel safe. And there's a big difference between the two. And a lot of men are just building shelters. They're building just enough. So they're staying in that constant turmoil. Whereas a man who intentionally builds a house can relax in his life because he knows what direction he's going. He's got good relationships. He's doing those things. Now, remember, that doesn't mean that life is perfect. The goal is not perfection. No man's ever going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. You're not going to do all this perfect. But if you keep plugging away one day at a time, being intentional today I'm going to live intentional. I'm going to live intentional tomorrow. Those intentional decisions will increase. You may make one intentional decision today. Well, tomorrow you may make 2 intentional decisions, and then 3, and then you multiply it to where your life is an intentional decision. You want to live intentionally. Get off the constant turmoil. Don't accept that lifestyle. Too many people are living that and they think it's normal. It's not. You can live intentional, and it starts today. All right, guys, closing out the show today, let's understand the reality of the situation. Most men aren't living for long-term success. They're just not. They're in survivor mode. If you make a decision to try to live with long-term success, to try to think long-term, then you're going to move into the top 10 to 20% of men just by that decision alone, even if you don't do everything perfect. See, the truth is, as men, we have to fight for our influence. If we're going to influence the next generation, if we're going to be men of influence in the way we live, if we're going to make a difference in people's life, we have to fight for that. Society wants to make you busy. Society wants to distract you. Society wants to emasculate you as a man and make you weak. You have to make that decision. How am I going to live? Who decides your life? You do. Who decides how you live? You do. Who decides what influence you want to have? You do. No one can build the foundation of your life except you. You've got to find a purpose. You've got to put it into place, and you've got to live it out. Will it be hard? Yeah, it will be. But will it be worth it? Definitely. It'll definitely be worth it. Will you regret it? Only if you don't do it. A lot of guys, when they get older, look back on their life and they regret. And most of the time, what they regret is the quick fixes they sought. They weren't living intentionally. They weren't making the healthy choices. That's what they regret. You don't want to be that guy. You want to be a long-term success. So you want to think about, what am I doing to have sustained growth? What healthy choices am I making? And how am I living intentionally? Living this way will make you a powerful man and a long-term success.
You've been listening to the Confident Man Podcast. Click subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. You can connect with David on Facebook and Instagram at David Maxwell. Find resources to help you as a man at theconfidentman.me. That's theconfidentman.me.